Erev Shabbat Shalom Rabotai. We're continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Sheviit. We're up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnah should be Leilu Nishmat Neria ben Tzvedlana Arambayev Menuchato Began Eden. Amen. We spoke about earlier, Rabotai, that a person is not allowed to remove rocks or stones from his field on Shemitah because just like plowing, it improves the land, making it more suited for planting. Now, this prohibition to remove the rocks or stones from your field only applies when a person wants to improve the land, not when a person wants to use the stones for building. But like all other avirot, there is the problem of marita ayin, the suspicion of wrongdoing. So for this reason, a person is not allowed to remove stones from his field on Shemitah unless it's clear that he's using it, that he's doing it for a permitted purpose. So the Mishnah now is going to deal with the halachot of someone who removes stones from a quarry, which is a mass of solid rock from which building stones are cut that you have in your field. So you have a big solid rock where you cut building stones in your field, and you want to remove some stones from it. So the Mishnah says, Lo yiftach adam machzeh b'tchila letoch sedeh. A person cannot begin to expose this massive solid rock in his field, meaning if you have this kind of massive solid rock in your field that is covered by earth, you are not allowed to dig into the earth in order to expose the rock and to cut stone from it, because people are going to suspect that you're removing the entire rock so that I'm going to be able to plant in the land beneath it. Ad shiyu bo shalosh murbiot shen shalosh al rum shalosh. This is asur unless this quarry, this mass of solid rock, has in it an exposed section of rock, meaning one that's not buried under the earth, an exposed section of rock that is large enough to provide 3 blocks of stone, and each one of these blocks measuring 3 amot wide by 3 amot long with the height of 3 amot. So 3 by 3 by 3, 3 blocks of stone that are 3 by 3 by 3. Shiuran esrim v'sheva avanim, that their size, meaning the total size of all 3 blocks, is enough to produce 27 pieces of stone. Each one measures 1 amma wide, 1 amma long, and 3 amot high. Because basically what you have is 3 times 3 times 3 for each block. They're basically 9, 1 times 1 times 3 stones. So 3 blocks have 27 stones. And if you have the elucidated article, you could see in the diagram how it helps very much. Now, if somebody has such a large, massive rock already exposed, a massive rock that's large enough to produce 27 pieces of stone, everyone's going to know already that this site is a quarry, a mass of a large stone that you use, cut other pieces of stone for building, so the owner can remove the stone from it on Shemitah, because people will know that you're removing the stone for building instead of to prepare the land for planting. And the Rab does point, and the Mefarshim point out, even in this case, you are not allowed to remove the stone all the way down to the soil. You have to leave a layer of rock that is at least 1 tefach high. That is in Rabotai Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vav discusses taking down a stone fence on Shemitah. You are not allowed to completely remove the fence. Why? Because people are going to think that you're clearing the ground beneath it so you can plant there. So Mishnah gives an exception. Gadel sheyesh bo 10 avanim shel masoy shnaim shnaim. If a fence has in it at least 10 stones, each of which is a load for 2 men, meaning the Rab tells us each of the 10 stones is so large you need 2 men to carry it. They're allowed to be removed, meaning a person can take down the fence and remove the stones from the field, because no one will suspect you of dismantling such a large and important fence just to strip the ground beneath it. Instead, people are going to realize that you're taking the stones to use them for building purposes. And the Mefarshim explain that what we learn from here is that large stones that only can be carried on a man's shoulder, they are allowed to be removed even if they're lying on the ground, because people assume that you need large stones for construction. But our Mishnah is teaching us that the stones in a wall which meet this requirement can be removed even if they are very small. Shi'ur gader 10 tefachim. This halacha only applies, the Mishnah says, where the height of the fence at least 10 tefachim, because the Mefarshim explain that when you have a fence that is less than 10 tefachim high, it's not considered important, even if the stones are massive. So a person would only be allowed to remove the large stones and not the small ones. Pachot miken machzev. If its height is less than 10 tvachim, or it has fewer than 10 stones, or if it has 10 stones, but not every one of them is a load for 2 men, that it would be considered like a quarry where you cannot take the stones from. And just like the halakha of this quarry, this massive stone, you can only cut it down to within a tefach of the ground. You have to leave a tefach of the higher layer of stone standing, so that the ground beneath it will remain unfit for planting. And the Mefarshim explain, even when a person is allowed to open a quarry and remove its stones, which we said was 3 blocks of 3 times 3 times 3 amot are already exposed, you're now allowed to take all the stones until the ground beneath it's exposed. You have to leave a layer of stone at the bottom that's at least 1 tefach high. So same thing here. If you want to remove the stones from a fence that doesn't meet the Mishnah's requirements of at least 10 tefachim high, and these stones are large enough, it's so big that 2 men have to carry it, you're only allowed to remove it as long as a tefach layer remains at the bottom. Now, just like the Mishnah, this Mishnah and the previous Mishnah teach, you're not allowed to remove stones from this mass of uncut stone or a stone fence unless it's sufficiently exposed or the fence is sufficiently important, like higher than 10 tefachim. The Mishnah gives 2 circumstances when you're allowed to remove the stone from such places. When does this halakha apply? Mitoch shelo. When a person is removing the stones from his own field, only then people are going to suspect you of clearing the ground for planting. But if you're removing stones from the field of another person, where people are going to know that you're removing the stones because you want to use them, not because you're using your friend's field, mashu wotzei itol, whatever he wants to remove, he's allowed to. And even in his own field, when do we say these halachot that you need the specific measurements? That's only when he didn't start removing the stones to use them in construction before Shemitah. But if he started before Shemitah, whatever he wants to remove, he can remove. And the Mefarshim explain, because since you started removing stone already before Shemitah, people know you're taking it for building purposes, and therefore you can take even more on Shemitah. That is in Rabotai, today's Mishna Yomi. Everybody should have Erev Shabbat Shalom. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.